Welcome to the Navik Gaming Podcast, where it is our mission to explore the business and future of video games. We bring together the industry's brightest builders, investors, and thinkers to keep a pulse on current events, dissect emerging trends in games, share lessons learned, and have a great time. This podcast is also part of Navik's growing ecosystem, which ranges from free and premium research to consulting and advisory services. For more information, visit www.navik.co. This episode is brought to you by Lightspeed Venture Partners. Lightspeed is a globally leading venture capital firm with over $29 billion in capital under management and more than 500 investments across the US, Europe, and Asia. With its dedicated gaming practice, Lightspeed Gaming, the firm is investing from over $7 billion in early and growth stage capital, making it by far the largest fund focused on gaming and interactive technology. Lightspeed's team combines deep expertise in gaming with a global multi-stage investment platform and a culture that truly puts founders first. Selected investments include Epic Games, Snap, and Stability AI, as well as game designers and producers who led the creation of titles like Fortnite, Call of Duty, League of Legends, Valorant, StarCraft 2, and many more. For more information, simply go to gaming.lsvp.com or check out the details in the show notes. And with that, let's jump into the episode.
What's up, everyone, and welcome to the Navik Gaming Podcast. I'm your host, Alex Takei, and this is the Interview and Insight segment. So Dream Sports is one of India's biggest sports and technology companies. For anyone that follows fantasy sports, you've heard of Dream 11, one of the world's largest fantasy sports platforms for fantasy soccer, volleyball, football, and more. Dream 11 has raised hundreds of millions of dollars and is honestly just one part of the Dream Sports family. The Dream Sports ecosystem consists of FanCode, Dream Sports Foundation, Dream Set Go, and finally, Dream Game Studios, the CEO and founder of which is joining us today. And we're having this conversation because for as much as we cover PC and AAA and mobile, something we don't talk about too much on air are sports games. And we know that they're some of the most popular sports genres of games in the world. The market size for sports video games is around 20 billion USD, and ostensibly some obvious juggernauts are EA Sports FC, Madden, and NBA 2K. But today we're going to discuss sports games with a finer pen towards geography and innovation. And there's interesting innovation going on in sports game at the micro level, mechanics and graphics, enhanced realism, lots of personalization, and merging real-world players with games. But what is the next lateral expansion? Is it just making more sports games? Are these territories poised for growth? I, of course, don't have the answers to these questions, but I'm excited to welcome Rohit Gupta, founder and CEO of Dream Game Studios, to help us figure it all out. Welcome to the pod.
Thanks, Alex. Great to be here. Excited to be here and really appreciate this opportunity.
Yeah. I'm pretty excited to record this episode because something we'll talk about later in the episode today is Dream Cricket 24. And although the Olympics will be far past over by the time this airs, I was watching and bummed that I didn't see any cricket in the Olympics this year, but apparently the cricket will return in 2028.
Los Angeles, you're excited about that.
Yeah. I also heard it's remarkably popular in the US, of all places, Texas. Cricket is huge. So.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you see the last World Cup that happened in the US, right? And there is like Major Cricket League, Major League Cricket, which has just come up, right? So exciting times for cricket, like as a sport, which has been very popular in India, now having a global footprint.
Yeah. And we'll definitely talk about like whether or not those tailwinds at some point in the episode. But before we kick off, I'd love for you to tell the audience a little bit about yourself and how you came to found Dream Game Studios.
Yeah. So hi, everyone. I'm the founder and CEO of Dream Game Studios. I would say one of the most exciting mobile games company coming out of India right now. Very specifically, we are building AAA mobile sports games, right? We are a sports gaming company. That is what we are doing. That is what we plan to continue to do. Me personally has been building games for 17 years now. Prior to Dream Game Studios, I was the founder of Rollercool Games, who was the pioneer of mid-core games from India. We won multiple international awards for many of our games from 2010 to 2016, including the International Mobile Gaming Awards in Barcelona, where we won the People's Choice Award, including the Game of the Year at IGDC, and many more, right? Interestingly, we were also the inventor of an Edison Award-winning tech called as Ruler Motion in 2014. I'm not sure how many of you have heard of that back then, but it is a very interesting tech that converts your phone into a Nintendo Wii kind of an experience, right? And yeah, Dream Game Studios, I would say, is even more groundbreaking than Ruler Q, more ambitious than ever. So yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you for that context there. Because it sounds like this is something that is part of the overall Dream Sports strategy. And so we're going to talk about how Dream Games, the studio specifically, folds into that strategy. Before we kind of start running down that pipe, Dream Sports, as I mentioned in the intro, has a lot going on. So as a larger conglomerate, it holds Dream 11, a fantasy sports platform, FanCode, which is a digital sports destination, Dream Sports Foundation, which is a philanthropy arm, Dream Set Go, which is a sports travel and experiences arm, and Dream Game Studios, which you just described now. But before we start talking about Dream Game Studios, I'd love to understand the general holistic journey of Dream Sports. How did it begin? Like, what's its mission? And kind of how did it grow into all of those different, how did it grow and acquire all those different pieces?
Sure. So if you look at Dream Sports, it's a very mission-driven company, right? And the mission is simple, right? To make sports better. That is what we are here for. That is what Dream 11 is doing. That is what FanCode is doing, Dream Set Go is doing, Dream Game Studios is doing. And I mean, it has very humble beginnings. Back in 2008, Dream Sports was founded by Harsh and Bhavit. So both of them grew up playing EPL Fantasy League, right? And the question they asked themselves is, why not have it for cricket, right? And that is how Dream 11 started. Currently, if you look at Dream Sports in 2024, it is the leading sports tech company, right? And very likely to become one of the leading in the world in time to come. To talk about the different business verticals that you see, right? So first, if you look at sports, right? Sports is very big. There are so many verticals which is possible, right? As a sports fan, you would, let's say, watch a sports match on a TV, right? You would play a fantasy. You would buy merchandise, right? You would maybe go and watch a sports game in a stadium, or you might play a sports games, right? So there are just so many verticals which is possible in sports. And for Dream Sports to become, let's say, the world's leading sports tech company, they have to have a very 360-degree approach, right? To be able to capture all these verticals. So if you look at Dream 11, it is already world's largest fantasy sports platform, right? FanCode is like a digital sports destination. It's more like a streaming platform, like merchandise. If you want to watch a match, you can go to FanCode. You want to buy merchandise, you can go to FanCode. And Dream Set Go, like you mentioned, right? It's travel, sports tourism. For the people who likes to experience physically the sports, right? What DGS is, we fill the vertical, which is sports gaming, right? So just like Dream Sports, as ambitious, we want to become one of the largest sports gaming companies in the world, right? Walk shoulder to shoulder with some of the big names which is out there. I know it's a very big vision, might take a decade or two, but yeah, I mean, that is what we are building for. And what really differentiates Dream Sports, I would say, is a founder-led approach, right? I mean, definitely all these verticals were set up, but we also understand that to truly disrupt a vertical, you need to have a founder-led approach to be able to build businesses from 0 to 1 to 10 to 100 or things like that, right? So, yeah, I mean, this is just a start, I would say. There is many more exciting things to come in the future.
Got it. Yeah, that's great context to talk about, what the overall mission. And yeah, of course, it seems like sports stitched together everything. It's as you said very well, a 360 view. I would love to unpack a little bit about also how the company is structured. How big is the company at this point? And theoretically, are all of the verticals sit separately with different heads of business for each business unit? Looking to understand what's the collaboration between FanCode and Dream 11, DGS, etc.
Sure. So first of all, there's a parent entity which is Dream Sports, right? And all of us are part of that parent organization, right? Whether it is Dream 11, whether it is FanCode, Dream Setco, and Dream Game Studios, right? One thing that I mentioned earlier, it's a founder-led approach, right? So every business unit, right, has a founder. So think of it like a corporate startup, right?
Yeah.
In which we are here to disrupt a market. We are here to disrupt a vertical, right? So we have a very similar structure when it comes to any typical startup, right? So we have a board, right? It's a very professional board. We have like regular board meetings that happens, right? Geographically, from the location perspective, it all depends upon where does it make sense to have that office. In fact, we call our office our stadium, right? So we'll have like, you might hear a lot of sports-related terminologies that we use internally. So we have offices in Mumbai and in Pune, right? So Dream 11, FanCode, and Dream Setco is based out of Mumbai. And Dream Game Studios is based out of Pune. Like, so if you look at Pune, right, it's one of the top destination for game development in India, apart from Bangalore and Hyderabad, right? So we have like some of the big studios like Ubisoft in Pune. We have Reliance Games. We have Super Gaming.
Got it. I see. And so all of the, as the founder-led mission, all of those companies, were they birthed in-house or were they acquired?
So it's a mix of both, right?
Mix.
So there were some companies who were born internally, right? So they were first incubated within Dream Sports, and then we realized that, hey, this could actually become like an organization, an entity itself, right? And that is how they were formed. In case of Dream Game Studios, it was formed through the acquisition of Rollercool Games back in 2021.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to unpack this because this is kind of like a big company, I guess what we would call entrepreneurship, where you're trying to create that entrepreneurship experience, but sometimes inside big companies. And this is, your structure is lending towards that approach.
Yeah.
Before, again, we go back to Dream Game Sports, I want to talk a little bit about Dream 11, because for those that are unfamiliar with fantasy sports, would love for you to explain, what players are doing on the platform. And where the basis of what comprises the majority of their playtime on the fantasy sports platform, as it may inform our discussion about Dream Game Studios' approach. Dream 11 currently has like 220 million active users at this point, but what comprises the majority of the playtime, and what are people specifically doing on the app?
Okay, so being a founder of Dream Game Studios, I'll definitely give you some insights into Dream 11, but that would again be limited to a certain extent, right? So first of all, just like any other fantasy platform, and going with the vision or the mission of Dream Sports, which is to make sports better, right? So Dream 11 is to actually enhance the sports experience that you have while watching a real match, right? Here is your opportunity to really put to test all your cricket knowledge, right? And pick the best team from, let's say, in case of cricket, there are like 11 players playing on both sides. So from 22 players, you select the best performing 11 players, right? Based on your cricket knowledge, based on the past performance of those players, based on the different dynamics between teams and things like that. And when the match starts, that knowledge is truly put to test. So it's like a leaderboard, right? In which different points are given based on how the match goes. So for example, if you score a run, you score a point, right? Based on these points, your ranking is determined on the leaderboard, right? And definitely the one who wins was able to have the best knowledge of the entire experience that was expected out of the match.
Got it. Yeah, that's great context though, because I think for some of our audience that might not be familiar with the fantasy sports betting platform, to separate it from what a video game is. And so this is more of like a companion app where you're tracking real players, real matches, making bets, etc., assembling like, a dream, no pun intended, roster, and seeing sort of how you do. And I'm sure that there are some synergies there with what you guys are doing in Dream Cricket 24, which we will eventually get to.
And there is definitely one point I would like to add here, since you mentioned that, like the betting part of things. But if you look at fantasy, it is actually much more than that, right?
Yeah.
It is not just about selecting a single player. It is more about selecting a roster of 11 players, right? To be able to, let's say, in a cricket game, right? Just like any other sports, there are different roles that different players play. So, for example, you have batsmen, you have bowlers, you have wicket keepers, you have all-rounders, right? So, to be able to create a team of these players requires immense cricket knowledge and understanding of cricket, right? To be able to finally select that team and to top that leaderboard, right? So,
got it. Yeah, it's very much like a team construction, team roster, team management, and a kind of, but it's not a management sim game, which is separate from like as those do exist.
Correct. It is connected to the real life, right? What is happening in a live match versus what is happening,
in a game.
In the game.
But that actually pivots us back towards Dream Game Studios. And we talked a little bit about what prompted the idea of building an in-house studio, which for you guys was we want to have a 360 coverage on the entire sports market, which includes sports video games. But I would love for you to tell me a little bit about the studio. What games you have built so far and how big the studio is. And where obviously we talked about where development takes place, but talking a little bit about the studio strategy for innovation and building games.
Okay, so there is a common DNA that we have inside Dream Sports, right? That is followed by almost, in fact, that is followed by all the business verticals and all the startups, right, within the Dream Sports ecosystem, which is to solve real problems, right? And if you look at what Dream Games is trying to do, is also trying to have a very problem-solving approach, right? Which might sound a bit weird when it comes to building games, right? You might say, hey, what is the problem we are trying to solve by building a game? So when we started Dream Game Studios, first we set out and this is something that we identified a problem, right? That there are 2.5 billion cricket fans, which is out there, and there is not a single game who is able to provide them the gaming value or the entertainment value that they truly deserve, right? If you compare it with a lot of other sports which is out there, let's say football, basketball, there are like so many great games out there. You mentioned two of them, FC Mobile, Maiden is there, and then there is NBA 2K, right? So we asked the question to ourselves, like, why should football fans have all the fun, right? Or baseball fans or maybe basketball fans. So we're like, hey, let's build a product which gives cricket fans an experience that they truly deserve. And that was the start of it. Definitely, there were a lot of business angles to it, right? First, a large addressable market, right? Secondly, if you look at sports genre, right, as such, you would see that historically, right, whether we go to the start of the gaming industry in general, when FIFA or EA Sports started FIFA, I don't know if you know this, but FIFA was first started in 1993, right? I mean, it's been 31 years, and that is one IP that is still number one. And like eFootball is also there. So there is like a huge market which is able to actually hold multiple players in, right? So from a business angle, if you see, Dream Game Studios wants to build a very sustainable, long-lasting and profitable business, right? And sports genre reduces that risk when it comes to building a legacy, right? Which is what we are after. We are not here to build a game for 1 year, 3 year, 5 year. We are here to build games for decade, right? I mean, we often say this, but we are actually not building for 2024. We are actually building for 2054, right? That is where we see Dream Cricket in the future. That's the ambition, at least, and that is how we make decisions internally, right? I mean, I see that. I don't know if like maybe in 2054, I might have retired. I don't know. Maybe I want to like sit on a beach, sipping a beer and playing Dream Cricket 2054, right? That's truly the vision. Yeah. And if you look from a size of the organization, we are currently 70 people strong and growing, right? Dream Cricket is the first game under the Dream Game Studios umbrella. Right? Yeah. If you look at Rollicule Games, it also started as a gaming company. We build a game for squash, badminton, tennis, bowling, and a lot of other sports games, right? In addition to that, we also build games in other genres as well, like a zombie shooter. We built a dance game, right? So very varied in different genres. And ultimately, we realized that sports is where we excel truly. And that is where we'll double down on, right? I hope I have covered almost everything with respect to Dream Game Studios.
Yeah, I think so. And so it's, I mean, in summary, right? So the studio is around 70 people. Dream Cricket is the first. It's the first game that is out by this studio. And you shared a lot about, why build a cricket game, etc. And I think that actually double taps into, specifically you mentioned there's, you're trying to build a business as well, right? And you're trying to tap into what is potentially like a blue ocean in the cricket sports gaming market, right? Right now, there's a problem. It's a problem statement for sure. Players are currently being underserved if they're into cricket. And so I want to talk a little bit about that market specifically, the India sports gaming market, because although we just mentioned in the beginning of this episode that the cricket is actually very popular in the US, it's obviously significantly more popular in India. So how big is this cricket market in India versus the rest of the world? And also, what are those players, what are their spend behaviors like in this market? I'm just curious as understanding a little bit about the demographics of the players that you're serving and that market specifically. It's probably very different from the West.
Sure. So firstly, you mentioned blue ocean, right? I agree with you on that. It's a blue ocean, yet red ocean, right? Contradictory statements. But the reason that I say that it's a red ocean, because there are so many cricket games out there in India.
Okay.
And it is natural, right? Because a fan base of 2.5 billion, right? Definitely you would want to address that at the end of the day. The thing is, what is unique is that majority of these games are built by studios in India itself, right? Primarily because it has been a very India-specific sport. It is now growing internationally as well. If you look at the market overall, all these cricket games has been able to accumulate almost 400 million downloads overall from a sports games perspective, right? There are definitely two categories. One is arcade sports games. Cricket League from Miniclip is the one who leads that. Almost 130 million downloads, maybe somewhere around like 10 million monthly active. Then we have realistic cricket games, right? Which is historically has been or traditionally has been Real Cricket and World Cricket Championships, right? So Real Cricket and WCC are both built by studios based in India, right? Dream Cricket, if you see, we fall in the realistic sports category, right? That is what we are trying to go after. From a monetization perspective, that's a different story altogether, right? So if you look at the overall sports gaming or overall gaming market in India, you can say somewhere around $1 billion, right? But if you look at sports, it's a very small part of it, right? Currently, the gaming market in India, from a revenue perspective, is largely dominated by battle royale games, right? Whether it is GMI or PUBG or Free Fire, right? Now, and that is where the blue ocean comes, right? Because there is like just such a huge opportunity when it comes to monetization, when it comes to games. But then the local games in India have been unable to unlock the true potential of monetization, right? When it comes to gaming in India, particularly the sports games. I'll also talk about maybe why that's the reason, maybe as we move forward in this conversation.
Interesting. Yeah, I think it's interesting to hear, because again, one of my other questions that you already answered was, what is the cricket games market currently comprised of? And it sounds like it's actually ultra competitive. There's lots of games that have been made in India for cricket. And so therefore your problem statement is we still don't feel that any of those, specifically maybe in the realistic genre, are satisfactory towards the actual experience. We're going to get there about talking about what specifically, platform gameplay, et cetera, about what that difference is. But before we move off the Indian gaming market, I do want to do a little bit of a compare and contrast between the ROW sports market and India. Like if you had to give me like three differences between rest of world sports video game fans and India sports gaming fans, what are those? As I think it will inform the last piece of our podcast discussion.
Sure. So rest of the world, I'll definitely give you a bit of a limited view, right? Primarily because we are very much focused on India. That is what we are going after. But definitely we have some decent understanding of how the global sports gaming look like, right? So from a market perspective, it's somewhere around $2 billion, right? Some of the major players, you had mentioned that FC Mobile is huge, right? Maiden is huge. Uh, NBA 2K is huge, right? If you look at from a gamer's perspective, what differentiates, let's say, the sports gamers in India versus sports gamers outside India, one of the biggest thing that stands out is the volume, right? There are just like so many sports fans in India when it comes to cricket, and a very young demographic, right? Again, right, it comes down to the shift that we are seeing in India right now, right? There is just like so many millennials, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, who are just getting digitally adopted, where we see the growth when it comes to sports gaming is going to be significantly larger in India versus rest of the world.
Got it. Yeah, I think the ones that would pop up to me are I've done an episode on the India gaming market as a general whole with the Lumakai Fund and a couple of other founders that are building different games, not sports games. But one of the biggest one is the heavy aptitude for sports in general, right? People just really like sports. The heavy aptitude also for RMG, which is probably it's very heavily present in India versus somewhere like the West. Not that there is no like DraftKings, et cetera. And also just the platform that people are playing on, right? Like all of those games, Madden, NBA, 2K, EAFC are like predominantly console games versus mobile experiences. And so I was curious because those have different spend those behaviors obviously inform the kind of game that you decide to ultimately build. And maybe that's an opportunity for us to take us there about, Dream Cricket, right? Is, tell me about the platform, tell me about the actual gameplay. I'd also love to understand, how important, given that you said that it's in the realistic genre, how important is it to have actual real world player representation? So the players that are actually out in the real world that people are betting on in Dream 11, are they present? Are those IP and likenesses present in Dream Cricket?
Yeah, so a lot of IPs are present inside Dream Cricket. And in fact, if you look at the vision of Dream Sports, right, it's ultimately the ecosystem that we're trying to build, in which
Right.
like in the future that you see, all these things will be interconnected, right? Whether it is Dream 11, whether it is Dream Cricket, whether it is Fan Code, whether it is Dream Game Studio, right? So it's a single destination for sports fans to just enjoy everything, right? So imagine like that a match starts, right, in a real life. You create your team, and the match starts, right? Now, after that, you don't have to do anything on Dream 11 because the match has started. You open Dream Cricket, you have your team from Dream 11 inside Dream Cricket, and then you start playing with them, right? And then you enjoy it so much, you like the kit and all, you go on the merchandise store on Fan Code and you just buy it from there, right? Things like that. So it's a long-term vision that I told you about when it comes to like connecting all the dots in the ecosystem. But I have to specifically talk about Dream Cricket in its current avatar right now. Then what do we really differentiate on? First are some of the pillars that we extensively focuses on, right? What we truly wants to give, like I'd mentioned in the past, in some time back as well, that we are trying to give the cricket fans what they truly deserve, right? So it has to be a 360-degree experience that you have to create, right? So there are multiple pillars that we have identified which will allow us to give that 360-degree experience, right? The first pillar being the visuals, right? I told you about the realistic game genre. So when it comes to the visual, it covers almost everything, right? Whether it's the best looking graphics, whether it's the best looking players, as close as possible to realism. You can say, let's say, ultra realism or hyper realism, right? We pride ourselves in saying that we are trying to build a AAA mobile sports game, right? So trying to like juice up the processing power of a mobile phone using the best in class tech, which is the second pillar for us, right? To be able to combine everything together when it comes to the visuals, whether it is animations, whether it's the stadiums, whether it's the characters, whether it's the audio, combining it all together and give you the smoothest experience possible. Which also brings to another sub-vertical of tech, which is, let's say, a multiplayer experience, right? It has to be a very seamless, competitive experience that we're trying to build. Then best gameplay, and to connect all of these things together, the best meta, right? So the problem that we're trying to solve from a meta perspective, we're trying to actually solve for, in fact, in a lot of sports, people have this dream to build a team which they feel is the strongest in the world, right?
Yeah.
Think of it like their dream team. That is the solve that we're giving to the users. Hey, here is a game, here is a platform where you can go and build your dream team. It doesn't matter where that player comes from, right? It can be a current player. It can be a player from 2000, 1990s, 1980s, doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
If it's cricket, build the dream team that you always dreamt of, right? And by the way, there is no such best dream team possible, right? Because it is very subjective, right? At the end of the day, you might think that this is my best dream team. Someone might say that, hey, this is the best dream team. And that is what creates like such unique experiences, especially in multiplayer experiences.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so in the multiplayer experience, I just want to confirm that you're slating up a roster of 11 against another roster of 11. So it's a PvP framework where you're playing this game against somebody else. You're not co-op playing with someone running half your team and you're running the other half.
Yeah, I mean, that is something that we have been discussing a lot internally. Currently, it is definitely 1v1. But in the future, let's see whether the co-op comes or not. One thing that I'll mention, Alex, right? What we're trying to do differently is we are live building the game. What that really means is that if you look at Dream Cricket, the game is not yet complete. Right? But we still decided to launch it, right? In our main market, right? We said, hey, and it was a strategic decision with a lot of advantages that we see. We say that, hey, let's build this game with the community, right? Let's listen to the users, what they want. So it is more about balancing what the user needs and balancing what user might not know yet what they need, right? And it has been like a fantastic experience for us, right? In which we have seen like a steady growth as we move towards our roadmap, right? And like we live in an age where the games are never complete, right? It's more like a game as a service, right? It's a live game, so it will continue to go on. But if you play the game, you would notice that there are a lot of features which are not there yet, and it is intentional. Right? We are taking a very problem-solving approach and a KPI-driven approach to product development, which is very unique in India.
Yeah. And I actually want to talk a little bit about like the current game's launch and reception. But, you mentioned this, you're double tapping on this thing. You said the three pillars, advanced tech, heightened realism. And one of them was being like, again, like we want to fulfill people's dream of building their dream team, right? And I actually found that fairly interesting because I was under the impression that a lot of people played sports games because they wish that they were the athlete. They were like, oh, I wish I could have been a basketball player, or oh, I wish I could have been a soccer player. But in reality, it's more to correct the wrongs of the real world. And so people are like, oh my gosh, like if so-and-so Barcelona lost and now I go into EAFC and I'm going to go correct the past. I'm going to queue up this Man City versus Barcelona match and I'm going to fix things. And so I think that's a really interesting core fantasy for the game. But I think what's important in that is obviously having that real world player representation. And so I'm curious from the business side, you just mentioned that you could have a cricket player's likeness from you said 1980 or something like that. How are you getting all those likenesses in the game? And what's the business model around licensing those images and likenesses, especially if the players are currently alive? And it's probably even more complicated if they're not alive.
Yeah, so definitely, when I said 1980, definitely we don't have any licenses from 1980 yet, right? I definitely spoke about the longer vision, but we definitely have a lot of licenses when it comes to retired players, right? Let's say from the 2000s, right? Or from, let's say from the decade which ended in 2020, right? It's very interesting because if you look at the licensing business bit of things, right? When it comes to cricket, it's actually very fragmented. right? As opposed to what you see in, let's say, NBA or FIFA, right? In FIFA, you will have like FIFPro. It's like a association of football players where it's the single organization that you have to interact with, and you get, let's say, all the licenses, right? In cricket, it is still a bit fragmented, right? So we are still trying to figure out how to like piece everything together. We see definitely a lot of, I would say, progress or improvements that is happening in the cricket ecosystem, right? With the cricket associations and things like that. So it's definitely exciting times, but it's a problem that we need to solve as we build along, right? It's not a problem that's solved entirely yet.
I see. Yeah. Because I would imagine it being quite complicated, because even it's definitely on sports like football and soccer, I'm under the impression that there's also even some challenges with licensing those players, because there's team ownership. There's like a team license. So like, oh, I can have the Tottenham jersey, but then there's the actual individual person specifically. And that's also an extra layer of complications. So all of these like licenses that have been structured for many, many years. And this is also like why with EAFC and then losing the FIFA license, they didn't lose any of their players. They still had all of the rights to the players, et cetera. So I was curious like how that dynamic is working for cricket. Because it also just is a lot of governance and overhead for the studio to manage. But on the other side, perhaps there's synergies from the Dream Sports Group. Yeah.
That helps a lot, right? That goes a long way. In fact, that's the strategic advantage, right? That we as Dream Game Studios can actually go and say that, hey, we'll build the most authentic cricket game out of India, right? Being a startup, right? And Dream Sports plays a huge role here, right? And see, Alex, it's an ecosystem shift that is happening, right? It's a very different approach that we're taking to product development, to everything, right? So definitely it's like think of it like a wave that lifts all the ships. So that is what we're trying to do, right? Hopefully cricket ecosystem will become as matured as what football or basketball and baseball is in time to come.
Yeah, makes sense. And it sounds like for you guys, you're thinking about cricket to India, or Dream Cricket potentially, as Madden is to the US. But you also are doing a very different development and go to market approach than maybe something like a Madden, which boxes it up, spends a couple of years on it, ships it out, and then does that annually every year. What has been challenging about this style of launch for you, and what has been challenging specifically about Dream Cricket's launch and reception as you've worked on this product live over the past couple of months?
So, in fact, it has been very interesting, right? This entire live building strategy that we went after. We definitely had some apprehensions before when we decided to go ahead with it. But then there are so many pluses that we saw going ahead with it. The biggest shift or the challenge, I would say, it is the mindset shift that the entire team was able to get just by launching the game out there, and to be able to see that you are out in the open, right? And people can actually publicly criticize you, for example, right? Publicly can say things about your game, right? For example, when you're in closed beta or when you're in open beta, you still get the reviews from the users, you still get the feedback from the users, but then the public in general is unable to read those reviews, right? So what you can do is you can go, hey, I mean, it doesn't matter what the rating is, right? You can be least worried about what the public perception would be, right? Because no one is aware what people are talking about, right? But when you go live, then everything is out in the open, right? People can criticize a game which is half developed. And we took that bet. We took that approach. Turned out that in first few months, or maybe in a month or two, it was like crazy. We had our ratings going down, right? But then that is where the team comes together, right? All ultimately comes down to the people who are building this game, right? They automatically understood what is the priority, right? In fact, I'll maybe talk about some of the culture values of Dream Sports and Dream Game Studios going forward. But one of that is user first, right? And that mindset shift, when it happened, people automatically realize, right, what is important for the game? What is it that we need to focus on? And instead, I mean, you have been in the gaming industry for so long, it could get overwhelming for the number of features that you have to build, right? It gave us that clarity on what we really need to focus on, right? So from a challenge perspective, I would say just the phase that we went through when the ratings were going down to the phase where we are now, right? So if you look at Google Play Store, we are somewhere around 4.3 stars, right? We were once around 3.7. And that is like truly a team effort, a truly a focus effort to truly focus on what like the user needs or user wants and what we believe user wants, right? So that has been that experience. I would like strongly recommend going with that approach where we do other game studios as well. It's definitely a bit counterintuitive, but has worked out pretty well for us so far.
Yeah. I mean, it's like they say, feedback is a blessing and a curse, right? I think is your backlog probably prioritized really well because all you have to do is check the comments and you're like, people care a lot about this and we need to fix it immediately. Versus kind of being in your own unit of 70, kind of postulating about what the priority might be. So it's very helpful to that extent. But at the same time, like you said, people are, unfortunately judging a product before it's completely final, right? And then, they might be saying like, oh, and it's hard for people who don't work in the business of making games to kind of see through where is this thing going, right? They're judging it right there at face value and being like, this thing is broken or this thing doesn't work the way that I would expect it to. And that can be hard, like you said, for your team to receive that feedback, especially to receive it publicly. But that was just interesting into knowing because I think you've had this launch and reception, and you're obviously building and also launching into a crowded, cricket gaming market. So a lot of people are also probably comparing your game, which maybe have a younger life cycle, to older games that have been out for multiple years.
Yes, and one more thing I would like to mention here, right? The focus that I was talking to you about. So whenever you launch a game, right, there is like a inherent pressure that you have with respect to user acquisition. You're like, hey, this is my opportunity. The launch has to be big. It has to be like so huge. And you don't know how the users are reacting to it, right? So you don't know whether the product market fit is there or not, right? So when we did the live building, the entire burden of user acquisition went away, right? Because we were like, hey, why are we doing this in first place, right? We are doing it to collect the user feedback, right, publicly, and to also have a mind shift in us as a game developers, right? And there was no user acquisition that was involved in it. The good thing was the kind of reception that we got from users was amazing, right? Almost 6 million downloads, right? 6 million users that we were able to get without user acquisition, right? And without tapping into the Dream Sports ecosystem yet, right? That was purely organic, purely based on the communication, that community thing that I was telling you about. 6 million users, 1 million more than 1 million monthly active users. So, yeah.
Got it. Yeah. And this is, again, mostly targeted, obviously, in India specifically. Do you think that, and I'm guessing this is more towards the question of like, what does success look like for this game? Like, how do you plan to grow? Do you think that Dream Cricket can go cross borders? And if so, what lends you to believe that?
Yes, definitely it can go cross borders, but India is going to be the major market for us, right? In time to come. If you look at, I already told you about the user base that a lot of other games has been able to get when it comes to cricket game, right? 400 million cumulative downloads of all the games. If you look at Cricket League, 130 million, right? We are still at 6 million, right? So there is like such a huge user base that we still have to cater to, right? And predominantly these users are from India, right? If you talk about cross-border, then definitely there are many more countries which are cricket crazy, right? Just like India. Right? And if you look at like, let's say Europe, right? Then there is like UK, right? If you look at, let's say, Asia Pacific, then there is like Australia, then there is South Africa. And if you look at like cricket fans, I mean, we live in a global economy, right? So cricket fans you will find everywhere in the world at the end of the day. We at the start of this podcast, right? We spoke about how the World Cup happened in the US, right? and how there is like Major League Cricket, which has recently started. So we see a lot of interest in cricket and a lot of cricket fans in the future for cricket. So definitely beyond India, there is a lot of growth that we see for cricket games, or specifically Dream Cricket as well.
All right. That's terrific. And actually a great segue to talk about our final topic, which is kind of just the global sports gaming market. Taking cricket aside, right? What are the opportunities for sports games in general to innovate? And also maybe what Dream Sports Group's role is in all of this. But before we get there, I kind of want to run the couple ideas. I had a conversation with a sports gaming VC about this. I'd love to get your take on, what is potentially next for the future of sports games in general. So the first would be lateral expansion, just make more sports games. So like you said, like what you guys are doing, expand into cricket, badminton, squash, and tap into like those underserved sports for people who would be interested in playing those video games. That sport of video game, right? The next thing would be to create more interesting game modes within one sport. So like the 3v3 basketball by Tencent, et cetera. There's been a lot of innovation specifically in basketball games for mode setup and like non-real world sports dynamics and team rosters. The third would be platform expansion. So put sports games in VR or something like that. And the fourth would be a deeper integration of video game sports and the real world. So combine sports and video game sports to make an entirely new sport, such as I saw drone racing at the Olympics or somewhere. It's not the Olympics. I think another competition where like you run and then you race a drone and then you like put it back down and then you keep going. So those are my 4 ideas. What are your ideas?
Sure, definitely, right. So I would say instead of calling it, let's say the like the sports which has lesser fan base, let's say you talked about squash, you talked about badminton, right? There are a lot of sports which has, let's say, a longer fan base, but they are yet unserved. Right?
Okay.
An example of that, I will give you a sports which is in India itself, right? I don't know if you have heard of the sport called as kabaddi, right?
Oh.
No, you haven't not, right?
No, I have not.
It is actually the second most popular sport in India, right? And yet there is no sports game built out for that, right? So one such opportunity would be, right, for, let's say, as a global sports gaming industry, right? You see India as a market for gamers to be growing, right? One opportunity could be to, let's say, build games for sports which are underserved, right? Because that is what will give you a lot of volume and ultimately a lot of business as well, right? Whether you should create games for sports which have a smaller fan base, it all depends on the organization and the goals of that organization, right? At the end of the day, right? There are definitely niche gaming studios, right, who focuses on, let's say, a smaller fan base, but then they are able to like drive a lot of value from that smaller fan base. Maybe the ARPUs would be much higher in that case, right? So that could be definitely one strategy. What I feel that going forward, innovations in gameplay would be, I believe, the biggest one, right? Because the popular sports in the world, for example, football or soccer, with around 3.5 billion fans, you can't compete with them on volumes, right? What you can do is to convert more of these 3.5 billion fans to start enjoying sports games, right? Not 3.5 billion users or sports fans. All of them doesn't play sports games yet, right? So maybe improve the penetration, improve the accessibility and things like that. Third thing you talked about was platform expansion, right? Something that we are very bullish about as well, right? I definitely see in time to come, provided that we are able to sort a lot of issues with respect to VR, that is something that could give one of the best immersive experiences, right? But then there is a hardware player here, right? Because once the hardware problems are solved with respect to VR and there is a critical mass who is able to adopt that hardware, right? When we see that disruption, that is when I think it will be a good time to start diversifying into different platforms, right? Apart from consoles and mobiles and things like that. And deeper integration in the real world. I mean, I haven't.
This is my most frontier idea.
Can you like give some more idea about it? I frankly not have thought a lot about it. But what are you thinking? Like, how does it work? Is it like a Pokemon Go kind of thing?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, so I don't know. It's like, like in heptathlon. I'm also like on this because I watched the Olympics was very recent. But like there's heptathlon, there's decathlon. And so there's like a sport where you just run. And then all of a sudden you start shooting at targets, right? Like, why would we not be like, okay, run, play a Call of Duty game, run, throw a javelin. Like, why would that not be part of the sport?
Okay. I mean, maybe something to do with augmented reality. I think that is what you're referring to some extent, right?
Yeah.
I think augmented reality is still some time to go. So the problem with this tech, right? Or I wouldn't say like problem, it's the evolution of any tech, right? Just like we have seen with mobile. This tech will evolve, right? But the stage where they are in right now, I think they are unable to reach that critical mass, right? So whether it is VR or whether it is AR, lot of interesting innovations happening in those spaces. But let's see how that plays out.
Yeah, well, I loved your responses and reaction, bringing me kind of back down to earth. I rowed Division I crew in college, so I spent 9 years being a rower, and I'm still waiting for my rowing video game. No one has made that, so. Not that we're a very lucrative market, and I actually don't think that there's a ton of overlap between those that play video games and those that row crew. I actually think it's probably like very asymmetric, but still waiting for the.
That's very interesting, actually, because like if you look at Olympics, right, rower is a part of Olympics. So if you're able to create, let's say, a game of Olympics, right, it will have, let's say, a considerable volume, right, because it's the small like. What would be the right word? Right? It's like small drops which makes up the ocean, right? It's like all the sports combined together could be like pretty big. There are a couple of Olympic games out there right now as well, right? We have seen that, but not yet achieved a critical mass. I think the innovation in gameplay will go a long way, right? Along with a very strong meta, right? Why should I like keep playing Olympic game, right? And in which I can like row or I can like play like javelin throw or whatnot.
Got it. All right. Well, as a final question to wrap up this topic, I want to hear a little bit from you about what you think the whole role of Dream Sports have in the innovation of the macro sports gaming market. We're doing, like you said, you're approaching this with this 360 holistic approach. But what are you most excited for? And how do you think that Dream Sports Group is going to have where do you think they're going to have the biggest impact in driving innovation in the sports space?
Okay. So a couple of things I'll mention before that, right? So if you look at Dream 11, I told you that it was first founded in 2008, right? It's been almost 16 years now. And when Dream 11 was able to find that product market fit, and if you look at like 2024, it's been like almost 8 to 10 years, more or less, 250 million users. It is still a leader, right, by a huge margin, right? And like if you dissect why is that? Is it because of the first mover? Right? We have seen historically multiple times that the first mover necessarily is not the thing. In fact, to reach number one is one thing, but the more difficult thing is to actually retain that position, right? What I'm really coming to is the entire approach that Dream Sports has when it comes to solving a problem, right? It is about the culture. It is about the people, right? Ultimately, Dream Sports is able to see a big picture, right? It's able to dream big. In a market, right, where such things is actually required right now. In fact, definitely there are more startups like Dream 11 who is trying to like disrupt the overall way in which India in general builds products, right, and become, let's say, a truly global organizations as such, right? And if you look at the approach in general, right, first thing, like a founder-led approach, right, which I spoke about, right? Go like a very mission-driven startups, right, within the Dream Sports ecosystem, right? And to be able to let these organizations to provide that strategic guidance, because see, they have seen that journey, right? What it takes to become Dream 11, right? And what we are trying to build here is we are trying to build more Dream 11s, right? Fanco, Dream Set Go, Dream Game Studios. Maybe we could become as big as Dream Set Go, and we have that strategic guidance, we have that strategic wisdom, right? That we get in that ecosystem, right? At the end of the day. So yeah, that is how we see the future from a collaboration perspective. Maybe I'll just touch upon that as well, right? So we don't have to reinvent everything, right, inside the ecosystem. For example, when it comes to building a backend, right? If you know this, then Dream 11 has one of the biggest concurrency when it comes to users, right? Almost 15 million concurrent users, right? Now, they have been able to build such resilient backend systems, and it wasn't built in a day, right? It took time, might have failed, worked, right? And ultimately, it reached a time where it reached a maturity, right? When we look at Dream Cricket and when we say that, hey, we want to reach a critical mass, right? With Dream Cricket as well, maybe 200 million users going forward. Now, if we want to build a system who is able to handle so much concurrency, we don't have to build everything from scratch, right? We double tap on Dream 11, we double tap on their learnings, we double tap on their wisdoms, and we work together to finally build a system that will withstand the future, like kind of future-proof. And this is just one example that I gave you back in. Licensing is something that we already spoke about. User acquisition, right? 250 million users. We are currently at 6 million, right? So much growth opportunity which is out there. And it is something which is available to every portfolio company, every startup with its inside the Dream Sports ecosystem, right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely a deep distribution advantage and inbuilt audience with the Dream 11 for sure. Yeah. Well, this is amazing. And thank you for sharing those like final concluding thoughts about Dream Sports Group. It was great to hear a little bit of how the structure and all the subsidiaries have come together, the vision for cricket or Dream Cricket in general, and also a lot about the differences and the nuances between the Indian gaming market and the Western sports gaming market. I've definitely learned a lot, and I'm sure that our audience has as well. There's clearly so much opportunity here, and it's amazing for you to share your journey. As a concluding thought, in case there's anybody in the audience that is interested in getting in touch with you or chatting with Dream Sports for any reason, how can they reach out?
I mean, there are multiple ways, right? We live in a digital world now. So there are like so many ways in which you can definitely reach out. We definitely have a website, but I think the best way to reach out would be LinkedIn, I believe. So yeah, just send a connect request. Would be happy to connect. Speak it out, brainstorm, right? Whatever.
Awesome. All right. Well, as always, friends, if you have feedback or ideas, hit me up at alexandra@naavik.co. I'm always open. And that's the end of our episode. Thanks, Rohit, for coming on.
Thank you, Alex, for having me here. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
If you enjoyed today's episode, whether on YouTube or your favorite podcast app, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, or give a 5-star review. And if you want to reach out or provide feedback, shoot us a note at podcast@naavik.co or find us on Twitter and LinkedIn. Plus, if you want to learn more about what Naavik has to offer, make sure to check out our website, www.naavik.co. There, you can sign up for the #1 games industry newsletter, Naavik Digest, or contact us to learn about our wide-ranging consulting and advisory services. Again, that is www.naavik.co. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.